Hello everyone and welcome to TPS training. I'm Lewis Weber with Behavior Care. During this segment we're going to be reviewing the overall organization of TPS, going through some of these tabs and talking about setting up your TPS file so that you can use this file in managing your students' behavior interventions. Okay, let's click on the TOC for Table of Contents for an overview of what all of these tabs do. Now I know you can click on this and read it yourself, but this will give me an opportunity to review all of them briefly, and then we'll take a look at those setup tabs. So table of contents is where we're at right now. Data entry is where you will enter all of your data into TPS. Now you'll be collecting your data in these data sheets over here, but you'll be entering the data into TPS on the data entry tab. Now setup and setup 2 we're going to take a look at. Setup is going to customize TPS with the academic blocks, teachers' names and ratings and so forth. Setup 2 is going to take a look at each student's name. You're going to enter each student's name and list the increasing and decreasing goals. H-note, daily home note, which is going to be linked to data entry. The data you enter into TPS will form this daily home note. Really nice. It's been updated considerably for this school year. Data sheet 1, DS1 and DS2. Data sheet 2, we have a 5-day data sheet for each student or a 1-day data sheet for all students. My preference is on the DS1, so that way you can always file the data sheet in the student's file folder, and it's very convenient as a hard copy backup, but you get to decide which one's going to be easiest for you to collect data. The P graphs, those are going to graph classroom management points. You may not be using classroom management points, but if you are, like tickets that you hand out and token systems and stuff like that, earning programs, then you can enter those numbers into the data entry tab, and I will in another time tell you about that, but it's going to display the graphs of those classroom management points right here. WSUM is also a new part of TPS. That's going to display the weekly summaries. It's going to average all of the increasing percentages and all of the decreasing percentages for all of your students. Now, unlike some of the other graphs that are down here below, the WSUM graph and also the P3, by the way, are graphs that are always live. You don't have to click on anything to send data to it. These graphs right here, these two graphs, are always available for you to review. AB, or academic block, is going to graph the occurrence and percentage of ratings of the increasing and decreasing behaviors per academic block. That's a really cool graph. We love that because it tells us so much. Now these other graphs, I'm not going to read these, you can read those later, but these are analyses that are relevant for a higher resolution interpretation of whether the student is improving or not. That was a bit wordy. What I mean is you're not going to necessarily look at these on a daily basis, but they are all available for you to analyze your students' performance. Now the H1 is not really a graph, it's just a printout of all of your daily home notes, all of the notes that you've entered in data entry. Not the home note that goes to the parents, but your daily notes, and you'll see that in another segment where you can provide daily notes for each student, for each academic block if you so desire. Okay. Well, that's the overview, and you can see I've separated the graphs in white from these other graphs and other important functions in color. The color ones are the ones you're going to access more frequently. Let's take a look at the setup. Here you see I've entered 10 academic blocks. I do encourage all teachers using TPS to enter 10 academic blocks. If you have more than 10, then go ahead and do what we've done here, which is to put two of them together. If you don't have 10, try to come up with 10. You don't absolutely have to have 10 academic blocks. It's just that you have 10 opportunities to record data or opportunities to record data in these 10 academic blocks, and the more that you collect, the better. So 10 is better than 9. Now, if for whatever reason you can't get 10, that's fine. Just use 9 or even 8. But the goal here is to use all 10 academic blocks. Teacher's name, just in case, it's our favorite guy here. The rating scale, low, medium, or high. Now, prior versions of TPS had what we call binary data. It was a 1 or a 0. 1 if it occurred in the academic block, 0 if it did not. This version of TPS doesn't do it that way. This version uses a rating scale. Now, it's not a rating scale of goodness. It's a rating scale of amount. How much occurred? How much occurred? Well, you might ask, are we talking about frequency? Well, it could be frequency, but we're not really recording frequency, but you can get a sense about it, how much generally occurred, or you might count it if you want and set up a rubric. You can do that. But I'm trying to avoid having any teacher, for TPS 4x4 that is, recording frequencies. But there's another issue you need to think about. When you record frequency, it doesn't record intensity, does it? It just records that particular behavior. So if you said, self-injurious behavior or physical aggression, well, is knocking over a popsicle stick piece of artwork on the table physical aggression to property versus throwing a chair through a window? You see, the variation is considerable in those kinds of behaviors that we track. And so even with frequency, we don't get that kind of intensity measure. Perhaps your student is engaging in a tantrum or exhibiting a tantrum. Is it for 1 minute or is it for 20 minutes? Is it intense or is it not intense? So we have multiple measures of amount. It could be the account of it or the frequency of it. It could be the intensity or the impact of it. It could be the length of time. All of these things come into a composite measure of amount, and we're going to rate it using a 1, a 2, or a 3. Now, for each classroom, it is going to be a little bit different. But what happens in practice is because low and medium or high do not have a lot of overlap between them. Like there's no medium high or medium low where the separation isn't quite as clear. Low and medium or high are very distinct. Everyone knows what those are. So in practice, this job is a lot easier than you might think that it is, and as you're listening to my description here. It's very obvious most of the time what a student's behavior, what category it falls into. Now, keep in mind, please remember, it's the amount of behavior. So a 3 on the increasing side is very desirable. A 3 on the decreasing side is not desirable. We want 3s on the increasing side. We want 0s on the decreasing side. That's the goal. Okay. Now, this level system is going to be clarified when we look at the weekly summary. But for right now, you get to decide 4 different levels so that at the end of the week, your student's performance can be summarized in that way. And it's based on percentages. So in this example, we've set 85% as an A and 70 as a B and so forth. The way it's going to be calculated, I will just take a quick detour to that. We have the increasing average for the week, the decreasing average for the week, so it's 61, and in this case minus 0, and then we're going to say plus 10 minus 4 gives us 67%. That's a C, and that was set up over here, 67%. And not until we get to 70 does it become a B. Now the classroom points is a place where you can record pretty much anything else that you want to record. Some teachers do have some very nice motivating systems, points and tickets and token systems and things like that. If you want to track any of that, you can track it, and I'm just going to hop over to data entry. You're going to track it over here. You can put any number you want here. There's no limitation to the kind of number that goes in classroom points. And whatever you want to call it, in this case it's classroom points, but you can call it anything you want by typing in the name there. If you want to call it tickets earned, you can do that, whatever that is. Now you'll note I've got these 10 categories. So it's WTG. That stands for way to go. Those are bonus points. We also have infractions. Those are minus points, so plus points and minus points. The reason that we have those is because there are times that you want to give a child some bonus points that are going to show up on this weekly summary. And sometimes they do some things that are particularly bad. Like, let's say, let's make it 8 points would be hits a teacher. Okay? Or maybe we want to make that 15 points. Whatever it is. So that when you do INF 8, it's because you are going to subtract off 8 points at the end of the week. Now, on a daily basis, that student might have received a 3 for physical aggression towards others. But that 3 is going to be averaged for the whole week when we look at these weekly summaries. So that 3 that the student received for the decreasing behavior on that one day gets lost, so to speak. But it could be so severe that we want to be able to put an infraction percentage that's going to take a percentage right off the bottom line here. Okay, so here it is, 80 plus 6 minus 10. I'm sorry, I said that the wrong way. 80 minus 6 minus 10. Okay, so here we have 74% minus 10 is going to be 64%. That gives them the student a C. So I don't want to say too much more about this. I do want to say that you get to make up your infraction codes. Let me click over to that. And your way to go codes. The only thing you have to do is if you change these, and you can if you want, the name should correspond to the percent. So if we call that WTG 9, we need to make that 9%. And the reason why I put the percentage in the code is so that when you look at data entry, you want to enter those codes. The code is the percent. So it just makes it very easy to remember it. If you had to call this something else, then you'd have to have a separate sheet to remind you how much was that worth. And this way, way to go is worth 2, infraction also worth 2. If you want, you can enter the kinds of things that will get you various points. For example, straightens bookshelf. Nice to peer. But you see what's happening is I'm going to quickly fill that up. There's only so much room there. And so you may want to enter those WTG actions and the infraction actions on a separate sheet of paper. So that way you can continue to append that list. Okay, let's click over to setup number 2. Setup number 2 is where you're going to enter your student information for increasing and decreasing behaviors. You'll note the organization here, student 1, CL. That's the initials. The reason why these are initials is because this is actually this is real student data that we're going to take a look at in subsequent modules. PED, MOS, scale wins, those are made up. And so we have 2 increasing goals. We have 2 decreasing behaviors, 2 increasing behaviors, and here we have 3 and 3. Here it's 2 and 3, and so forth. You can use all 4 or just one of them. I do encourage you to have at least one in either category, and I also encourage you to have some kind of balance between these. They don't have to be exactly 2 and 2, but it's nice when they are at least close. And the reason why is because we want to be, for every decreasing behavior, we want to have an increasing behavior. And it may be that we have increasing behaviors. If we only had one of them and a bunch of decreasing behaviors, we might find that those decreasing behaviors even though we can list them separately, are really functionally related, and they all occur at the same time anyway. So you want to be careful about that. Don't provide more detail than you need. For example, if you find out that verbal aggression and physical aggression always occur at the same time, we don't need to record both of them, do we? You could record one and know you're recording it for both. And TPS provides a way to find that out, by the way. So we want to try to balance them best we can. The most important thing to know about increasing and decreasing target behaviors is we don't want them to have dependencies. For example, if I had an increasing target of task completion, I wouldn't want to have a decreasing target behavior of doesn't complete work, because I couldn't do both, or a student couldn't do both. A student could not have the increasing target of task completion and have, I should say, if the student did complete the work, the student could not have uncompleted the work. You see, one keeps the other from occurring. So we want to try to avoid that. We want these goals to be independent. Now, a lot of the goals that we track, or the behaviors that we track, are related, but they're still independent. For example, verbal aggression and appropriate social behavior, or appropriate verbal behavior. Those can both occur in one academic block. They are, in a sense, opposites, but not in the same way as task completion and not completing the task are related. It's a different kind of relationship. You can be appropriate verbal. You can have appropriate verbal interaction, and you can have inappropriate verbal interaction in the same academic block. They don't interfere with each other. That's what the thing that we want to go for, is so that they don't interfere. Now, you can have 24 different students going across here. This goes all the way up to 24. And if it turns out that you want to change these increasing and decreasing behaviors a lot, like if you had for JB, you started to work on these things, and then you say, you know what, I'm going to work on an entirely different set. Go ahead and just start a new student. Put JB2 over here. JB.2, or however you want to list it, and then come up with a new set of increasing and decreasing behaviors. And in some rare situations, there have been students who had two TPS slots taken because their behaviors were recorded. There was a wide enough range of behaviors, but most of the time, one column is going to be enough for a student, and increasing and decreasing target behaviors are listed there. Okay, so that's a quick overview of TPS. Table of contents, data entry, setup 2. These sections right here we're going to go over at other modules. You got all your graphs over here. Couple other details. When you open up TPS, it's going to ask you if you want to enable macros and various other things like that. Just say yes. Go ahead and click on enable. If you don't enable, then TPS will not run properly. And also, when you enter your data, which we're not going to do here, but just because I'm thinking about it now, I want to tell you, always save. Now, you may not be entering data here, but if you're going to be setting up here, for example, and putting in your different goals, you definitely want to save it. Most people have that icon up on top. If they don't, click here and then click on save. Okay? All right. Well, Module 1 is now complete. You know about setting up TPS. You know about the different tabs. This is Lewis Weber for Behavior Care. Thank you for participating, and look forward to sharing other modules about TPS subsequently.